Yeah. Good afternoon, all the participants of this summer program. Welcome to the current session on advanced mechanical surface characterization techniques and applications by Dr. Chintan M. Bhatt, who is National Product Line Manager, Surface Characterization with Anton Par. Probably many of the BTech students might not have heard about this company. So just for their information, this company is largely working in the area of primarily rheology. So their flagship product is a rheometer. And just for your knowledge, rheology is basically flow science, but here we need to address what flow, because solids also flow, liquids also flow, gases also flow, and gels also flow. So within the domain of rheology, if we talk about the flow of solids, the forces and the deformation, it is then the solid mechanics, the governing science. And for fluids, whether liquid or gas, the governing science is fluid mechanics and thermodynamics. And now the interesting part is the intermediate stuff. For example, the gels like the toothpaste, creams, greases, various polymers. So rheology as such specifically comes into picture, and as we have viscometer primarily for viscosity, then rheometer is more advanced characterization. And then of course Chin introduce you, they have many more domains or divisions like advanced mechanical surface characterization, so which involves nano indentation and atomic force microscopy. So I have attended their 2 days course at their Gurgaon location in person, where we were introduced to these mechanical surface characterization techniques. So it was a wonderful session there. And regarding the speaker, Dr. Bhatt has obtained his PhD in Instrumentation and Applied Physics from IISc Bangalore, which is the top institute of the country. He is having more than 10 years of experience leading global projects in the field of measurement and instrumentation. We know as an engineer, this is a very important domain, the measurement and instrumentation for characterization of materials. He has co-authored 14 research papers in international journals, conferences since 2008. He was selected and awarded Leaders in Innovation Fellowship from Royal Academy of Engineering UK in 2018 for his contribution towards scientific instrumentation in India. He has also delivered invited talks at various prestigious institutions, including IISc and the relatively new IISERs in the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research. These have been set up at like Mohali, Pune and some other locations. Recently, he has been invited to serve as a guest faculty of Center for Sensors, Instrumentation and Cyber Physical Systems at IIT Delhi. He has a vast experience in conducting workshops and user trainings, providing extensive knowledge about nanosurface property characterization. So his current designation I already told you. So I welcome Dr. Chintan to this session. Thank you, Dr. Chintan, for accepting the invite. Benefit of students and faculty members. I also thank Dr. Dharmesh Gala from Anton Park. Now the control is to you, Dr. Chintan.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shiv, for such a elaborative introduction. Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for joining us today for this session on advanced mechanical surface characterization techniques and applications. I hope I have prepared something for you as an audience, but I'm not sure how much I will be justifying the content which I have shared, I have in my presentation. But you can note down my email ID and LinkedIn profile, right? So that any point of time, after the presentation, if somebody is interested to have a more detailed discussions about specific requirement, right, I can discuss later as well. So as Dr. Shiv has already mentioned that today I'll be covering very two different unique techniques. One is we called nano indentation technique. It is also referred as instrumented indentation technique. And then the second technique that we'll be talking is on AFM. AFM is nothing but an abbreviation of atomic force microscopy. So these two new techniques, I'm not sure how many of you are already aware about these two techniques, but these are relatively new techniques for undergraduate students. At PhDs and other levels, people and mainly the material scientists are using these techniques for their research work. So let us begin our presentation for today. Let me start with a small introduction about our company. Entenpar is an international company based in Graz, which is in Austria, Europe, with 3,500 plus employees. The company is presently owned by a charitable trust called Santner Foundation, and whatever the profit that company is achieving, 80% of the profit goes back to this charitable foundation, and around 20% of the profit goes back to the company for their R&D activities. As far as the presence of the company is concerned, we are equally distributed all across the world. One of the subsidiaries, 100% subsidiary, is present in India, and our headquarters is based in Gurgaon. We have around 5 application laboratories all across India, where people can access the instrumentations for their sample testing. As far as the journey of the company is concerned, company started in 1922 by Mr. Entenpar. Later in 1932, his daughter Margaret joined the company. The vision of the company was to build a great instrument with a great people. In 1957, the major breakthrough has happened where company has introduced the first scientific product called small angle X-ray camera in collaboration with Dr. Kratky, which is the product which is known today is a Kratky camera. And from 1957 onwards, the company's scientific instrumentation journey has begun. Today, Entenpar has around 170 instrumentation solutions serving various industries like pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, metallurgies, petrochemicals, automotive industries, and many more. So with this small background of our company, I would like to straight away go back to the technology. I will not be talking about the instruments, what it is. I'll be more talking about the technology of these instruments. Let us start. So what are the topics that I'll be covering in my first session? Why to study surface properties, particularly at nanoscale, the conventional technologies and present scenario, the introduction to instrumented indentation technique, which is nothing but nano indentation, basic building blocks, means instrumentation part of it, practical considerations, if possible, few case studies, then I'll summarize. And Dr. Shiva, is it okay if I give small assignments to you? You can later pass it to the students or the attendees. Let them.
Sure.
Okay, right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, okay. So let me start. Why do we study the surface properties? People say that surfaces are invented by devil. But in fact, it is not, because the main reason why people see that surfaces are not so great is because surfaces share its border with the external environment. Okay. For any material or for any product, surfaces share its border with the external environment, and these external environments are not static in nature. It keeps on changing. And this environmental and hence this interaction basically decides the future behavior and characteristics of the surfaces. Inside the bulk, there won't be much variation, as the atoms are in connection with the similar kind of atoms. So the environment is very, very confined, and there won't be much changes in over a period of time. So mostly the inner part of the material remains as it is not exposed to the dynamic environment. So the surfaces, what kind of interaction? So now what is the basic question is that what decides the behavior, the interaction, right? Is constructive or a destructive? When the surfaces are interacting with the external environment, right? One has to decide whether the interaction will be constructive or a destructive. So for the manufacturer to run a product for a longer period of time, right? When they want to serve the customer, right? They see that their product survives for a longer period of time. And for that purpose, you have to make sure that whatever the surface properties that is achieved with your manufacturing processes is such a way that the interaction becomes constructive. Okay, means serves the purpose. The characteristic of the surfaces should serve the purpose of the product. If it is destructive, then what happens that over a period of time, right, your product will fail, and which is not a good idea, or which is not a good sign for the manufacturer as well as for the customer. Because customer will, when the customer is using the product and it fails, customer thinks that the manufacturers are not good. Okay, so customer cannot utilize the product, and the manufacturer also gets a bad impression. So for both the community, it is not good having the destructive properties of the surfaces. So who decides whether the interaction will be constructive or a destructive? That depends on the characteristics of the surfaces. And the characteristic of the surfaces is defined by what? The characteristic of the surfaces is determined by the processes and treatments used to manufacture such parts of surfaces. So processes and treatments, okay, manufacturing processes, treatments will finally determine the characteristic of the surfaces, and hence it will tell whether the interaction will be constructive or a destructive, and hence eventually determines the service life and sustainability of the product which is manufactured by the company. So it is very, very important for one to characterize the surface properties of any material or any product. Like, as your focus theme of this summer program is on 3D printing, 3D printing is also one kind of manufacturing processes. And then there also, I believe that when you are manufacturing an object, 3D object, right, you are setting up some parameters, right, and that parameters will eventually build your object, right? So this parameters that you are setting up, right, is nothing but a process parameter. When you are setting up this process, so even for a same material, if your process parameter differs, the final product will be having a different properties. So you have to make sure that whatever the test parameters that you have defined is optimized, right? Because you know where exactly this object is going into the field. There are different things that people are manufacturing with the 3D printing technology. People are also developing some metal objects, the polymer objects, the plastics, and many other things that people are utilizing to glass. Okay, glass also has been fabricated, plastics, metals. lot of things are coming up with the 3D printing processes. So it is very important for someone to optimize the process parameters of the 3D printing to achieve the correct optimized properties for the application. So point is, why do we need to study the surface properties? Because that surface properties will eventually determine the shelf life of the product. So it is important to study the surface properties. Once we know why we need to study the surface properties, the next question is that why do we need to study at nanoscale? The nanoscale properties of the surfaces. People have come up with a lot of research where they have found that the mechanical properties of small volume have found to be different compared to those of the bulk material. And the graph that is on your right hand side is a proof of that. Okay, where if you see, when the size has been reduced, when you go from right hand side to the left hand side, where the size is decreasing, right? If you see, the strength of the material is increasing. It is a log scale basically. Okay, so to make it a linear relationship between the strength and the size, we have converted the x into the log scale. So you are seeing that. Otherwise, if you convert it into a linear scale, it will be a very exponential growth. That smaller is stronger. Okay, so it is very, very important for someone to study the properties at nanoscale, because nanoscale property is different than the bulk properties. So we have answered 2 questions. Why do we study surface properties? And the next, why we study at nanoscale. So nanoscale surface property characterization is very, very important. Let's talk about the conventional techniques that is still present today, but and what are the properties that is important for anybody to characterize mechanical properties are the hardness and the elastic modulus. What is hardness? The hardness is an indicator of plasticity of the material, whereas the elastic modulus is indicator of elasticity of the material. Okay, and for that we need to have a system or an instrument which should help us to characterize hardness values and the elastic modulus of the material. In the conventional technique, we have hardness testers and we have a tensile testers. Okay, those who are in the mechanical engineering background, right, they must be having little idea about these instruments, the hardness testers and tensile testers. The hardness testers gives you information about the hardness of the object. Tensile tester gives the information about the elastic modulus of the material. So it means at present people needs to buy 2 separate instruments to measure both of these important properties. You cannot conduct experiment in one go and get both of these properties together simultaneously. This is the limitation of existing conventional techniques. You need to have a 2 separate instrument for that. So what are the limitations of the conventional measurement techniques, particularly when you want to characterize nanosurface properties? Limitations are mainly this conventional techniques needs an optical microscopes at nanometer length scale. And it is as they are utilizing optical microscope, that somebody has to sit and look into the optical microscope for the dimensional details. So again, first you are dependent on optical microscope resolution, okay, which is nothing but in a micrometer scale length. And then you are also dependent on the operator who is actually measuring these dimensions using the optical microscope. So if the operator, so human error also will be involved into the final result. Okay, so the large operator influence because of the optical measurements on the final value. Second thing, no information about the events that takes place and all these during the experiments, means when you are conducting experiments, right, whatever the measurements that you are doing is only after the experiment. During the experiments, you cannot see any events happening, or you will never have any okay, sorry. Yeah, so no information is about the events takes place during the experiments. Then the fourth one is does not support the measurement of both the hardness and elastic modulus simultaneously, which I already discussed in the previous slide. So these are the couple of major limitations from the conventional measurement techniques of surface properties. So then there is a need for a technique which should help people to get rid of this limitations. That technique is nothing but a nano indentation technique. What is nano indentation? Nano indentation is called as either the depth sensing indentation technique or instrumented indentation technique, where what you can do is you apply a force, okay, on with a very sharp tip. You apply a force with a sharp tip on the surface, and then you are measuring a resultant displacement into the sample. And this applied force and the displacement will be measured continuously during the loading and unloading cycle. I will show you one kind of the animation where you will be able to realize what I mean by loading and unloading cycle. And this particular loading and unloading cycle data of force and displacement data, when you plot against each other, you will get a load displacement curve, which you are seeing on your right hand side. And this curve will give you a lot of information about the properties that we are looking for. And these properties are hardness and elastic modulus of that particular sample. How we are going to discuss a little later, okay, how we are going to extract the information from this load displacement data. So before we start how it works, we should have an instrument, right? And how this instrument should look like. That, as I mentioned previous slide, that we have to apply a force and we have to measure the displacement. So we should have two mechanisms. One is called force actuation mechanism and another is called displacement measurement mechanism. And how to generate an indentation. For indentation, you will have to have a very sharp indenter tip, which is nothing but as a red mark that you are seeing on your left hand side block diagram. The red mark is an indenter tip, and this tip will be always, most of the time, is a diamond tip. Diamond is a very, very hard material. I hope everybody knows about it. And this diamond tip is mounted on an indenter shaft. And this shaft is connected to the actuator and measurement mechanism. The shaft is connected to the actuator and the measurement mechanism. So when the force is applied, the shaft will move in the normal direction and downward direction. And when you are unloading, lower the force, this tip will be moving in the upward direction. So this shaft will be moving up and down depending on the force that you are generating. And then the displacement that is happening will depend on the material property. If material is soft, this diamond displacement will be more. If material is hard, displacement will be less. So what are the parts that we have? Again, instrumentation part, actuation mechanism, measurement mechanism, indenter, and then XY stage platform. XY stage platform will be holding the sample. And the whole assembly is sitting on a supporting frame, which is nothing but a granite frame. If you see this, is a granite frame. And as I already mentioned previously that we are talking about the nanometer scale displacement. right? We are talking about the nanomechanical properties, right? Our displacement force will be nanometer scale. When we say nanometer scale, we have to take care of a lot of vibration issues, okay? Because the vibrations that is reaching out on our floor, right, will be in the range of nanometer scales, displacement, okay? So we cannot differentiate between the vibrations and the actual displacement if we cannot isolate these vibrations reaching out to the interface. So we need a vibration isolation platform at the bottom of this granite frame. So all the physical vibrations reaching out to this platform will be isolated. So now we have an instrument ready. How do we perform the experiment? So before that, these are the different geometries of the indenter available for conventional, like these are the different indenters available for this instrumented indentation technique, having a different geometries, and their roles are also different. I will not be able to cover the role of each of these indenters in this presentation because we will lose the time otherwise. But each of these has a specific role to play when you want to extract some of the information from the surfaces. The most common geometry for the instrumented indentation or nano-indentation technique is a Berkovich indenter. This indenter, again, as I mentioned, the material that we use is most of the time diamond, okay? And the tip radius of this Berkovich indenter will be something in the range from 70 nanometer to 120 nanometer range. And out of this, sharpest probe will be nothing but a cube corner tip. Cube corner tip will have a radius of something around 30 nanometer scale. Okay. So we will not discuss more in detail about each of these geometries, but these are the list of indenters we use for the particular experiments. So instrument is ready, indenter geometry is also known. Now we will do one experiments. Okay. So a typical material response. Okay, I think I missed out one animation slide here, which could show you how exactly the indentation. If time permits, I will be able to show that a little later. But see, typical responses when the tip moves inside. I will go back. Okay, so now I'm applying a force. This shaft will be moving inside the sample. And then when I'm releasing the force, that shaft will be moving upward direction. So shaft is moving in downward direction and upward direction. And simultaneously, I'll be measuring the displacement. So this applied force and the displacement, I am measuring, taking it to the computer, store it in a file. And once the experiment is over, right, I will be plotting this force and displacement data as a function of each other. So this is my loading cycle and this is my unloading cycle. So typical responses looks like this, okay? But when you see this responses, you can first figure it out what exactly it is, okay? What is the response of the material? If you refer the graph A, okay? If you refer the graph A, there is no hysteresis, okay? The loading and unloading cycle follows each other, right? It means that the material, okay, qualitatively you can define that the material under the test is an elastic material, 100% elastic material, okay? There's no plasticity involved in it. Second, when you see that second graph B, right, where loading and unloading are not following each other, okay? There you can say that the material exhibits either elastic, plastic deformation, okay? Material responses elastic as well as plastic. Though the unloading curve, right, the unloading curve tries to reach to the zero, right, it is not exactly coming back to zero. Okay, up to some point of time, you will see that it is following the loading cycle, but then it starts deviating. Okay, and this is nothing but a plasticity involved in the material. So it is elastic plastic material. The C1 will be a plastic material. It is recovery is very less recovery. So less elasticity, more plasticity. If you see the D, right, you will see a pop out event, pop in event. Okay, and D and E both are showing pop out and pop in events, right? So pop in events is nothing but a crack formation that happens during the indentation experiment. The pop out event that you see in the D is giving the information about the phase transformation that takes place in the material. So if you see this kind of response, right? So the load displacement curve, as I mentioned previously, right, is nothing but a very good information about the response of the material. Elastic, plastic, phase transformation, creep, pop, cracking, those information you will get from the data straight away. This you can see even during the experiments. When the experiment is going on, that time also you will be able to see these events happening, right, which was not possible in case of conventional technique. So now we have got the load displacement data. Okay, we got the qualitative information about the sample, but now we want to have a quantitative information, that how much elastic, how much plastic, right? So what exactly we do, right? So we got the load displacement data on your right hand side, and then the unloading curve. When you fit the unloading curve, right, you will get a slope value. Linear fit the unloading curve gives you a slope, and that slope value is nothing but a stiffness of the interface. Stiffness of the interface, the indenter and the surface. This surface stiffness we are utilizing and putting into one equation, okay, which is nothing but here we have shown Hc is equal to Hm minus sigma Fm by S. So the stiffness is S here. Okay, Fm is nothing but the maximum force that you are getting from the load displacement data. So you got maximum force from the data, S from the slope, right? Epsilon is a constant, which is nothing but a 0.075. Okay, and Hm is the maximum depth. Hm is the maximum depth that you get it from the load displacement data. Fm, which is maximum force that you get from the indentation data. Stiffness you get from the linear fitting of the unloading curve. You have Hm, Fm, and stiffness. Epsilon is a constant value, which is nothing but 0.75 number. Once you have all these four values, you put it into this equation, you will get Hc. Hc is nothing but a contact depth. This contact depth we are utilizing to calculate the projected contact area. Okay, so you take this Hc value, put it into this equation, AP is equal to C0 Hc square. So Hc you got it from here. C0 is specifically this coefficient C0 depends on the geometry of the indenter. Okay, in this case I have taken the Berkovich as a indenter. Okay, so the geometrical constant of the Berkovich indenter is nothing but a 24.5. So 24.5 into contact depth, which you got it from the load displacement data, square, right, will be the contact area for this particular case condition. So now you have stiffness, you have contact area from the load displacement data. And then we have got two equations. One is for hardness, another is for the reduced modulus. And this model has been defined by one of the scientists called Oliver and Farr. These are two people, Oliver and Farr. They have come up with this model to find out hardness value and reduce modulus from this instrumented indentation data. This equation says that hardness is a function of maximum force divided by contact area. So now you have a contact area. What is the maximum force that you have, that you got it from the load displacement data? You can calculate the hardness value. You have FM and you have AP now. So you got hardness. And the unit of this is nothing but in Pascal range, gigapascal. Then the reduced modulus. The reduced modulus is a function of, again, stiffness and the contact area. The beta is again a constant which depends on the geometry of your indenter. Different geometry, different beta. Different geometry, different C0. So C0 and beta, C0, beta and epsilon. C0, beta and epsilon are dependent on the geometry that of the indenter. You got stiffness, you got contact area, you have beta. Once you put this value into this equation, you will get the reduced modulus. Now this reduced modulus is a combined effect of indenter and surface of the sample. Okay, so means the sample and the indenter combined effect. If you really want to find out the sample modulus, right, you have to utilize this extreme right equation, where you should know what is the Poisson's ratio of the sample under test. Okay, we know what is the Poisson's ratio. See, I stands for indenter, VI is a Poisson's ratio of diamond, EI is a reduced Young's modulus of the diamond. These two are known values. Okay, we know what is ER, which is calculated from this equation. If we know what is VS, which is nothing but a Poisson's ratio of sample, and we put these values into this equation, you will really get the indentation modulus of the sample. So now, as you have got the load displacement data, how to extract the information, this slide gives the information about how to extract the hardness and elastic modulus of the material under test. So this technique basically gives the information of hardness and elastic modulus simultaneously. And as I have shown previous slides, right, where you can see all these events that is happening in between, right, during the experiments, right, will also help you to conclude something about the sample, which was not previously possible. Here, you are not utilizing any optical microscope, right? There is no manual intervention. Everything is automated. Okay, everything is automated. So there is no manual error involved into this. There is no optical microscope. So there is no limitations on the resolution, right? And then the third benefit that we are getting is we are able to measure hardness and elastic modulus simultaneously with one single experiment at one single location. These are the benefits of the thing. So now the question is how to validate my data, how to validate whatever the value of hardness and reduced modulus that we are measuring is accurate, right? As I mentioned, the stiffness is already, we got the stiffness, right? We put it into equation, we get HC, we get, and everything is fine. But how do we know or validate whether my data is right or the modulus that I've got or hardness which I have received, right, calculated, is correct for this given sample? For that, we need to validate our data. Means whatever stiffness that you are measuring is correct. So our first equation, HC is equal to HM, right, minus epsilon FM divided by S has to be correct, right? Then we have to correct the contact area. If HM, FM, S, epsilon, everything is corrected, right? You can calculate the HC correct. Now you have correct HC, but if your C0 is not correct, right? Then what will happen? Then you will be ending up with a wrong calculation of contact area. Wrong calculated area will give me a wrong value of hardness, even wrong value of reduced modulus, as hardness and modulus are a function of contact area as well. So it has to be important for anybody to correct these parameters C0, S, FM, HM. I will not, if time permits, I will discuss. Otherwise, I think we will continue with, at least we know that what are the informations and how important this technique is and how it can be utilized for the mechanical property characterization that we have understood. So let us go and discuss about the couple of case studies, okay, where exactly this nano indentation technique can be utilized. So there are people have started utilizing thin films, okay, coatings, where people are more interested in coatings, or where you really wanted to optimize the, okay, why do we need to coat a sample, right? Why people are preferring a coating on the material, right? Important things are there. And then these coatings has to have some kind of the properties which has to serve the purpose. Say for example, okay, I'll give you a very simple example of a stent. I hope most of the people knows about the stents, right? Which we, the doctor mounts the stent into the arteries, right? To avoid the blockage, okay? So remove the blockage and put the stent into the arteries, and then you keep it there for rest of the time, rest of the life. The stent, when you are putting inside the right arteries, and when the blood is flowing through the stents, right? What should be the characteristic of the surfaces of the stent? That there should be a minimum intervention of the surface of the stent with the blood. There should not be any collection of the blood on these surfaces, okay? There should be a minimum the interaction between the surface and the flow of the blood. If there is interaction, slowly the particles of the blood will start accumulating at that particular interface, right? And starts blocking again, create a blockage again, right? Which is not advisable for, because you are going to play with your life, right? So you cannot play like that, okay? So people has to, and the stent material is nothing but a nitinol kind of stuff, okay? So those material are not, what do you say, is not offering a very good friction coefficient with a blood flow, okay? So there can be an accumulation of blood on this material, but there is no alternate material for this stents. The stent material is very is identified, and this material offers a high value of friction coefficient. So there will be an accumulation of blood, which is not advisable. So what alternate that people are coming up with is that they are doing some kind of a coating on this material so that they can reduce the friction coefficient between the blood and the surface, the stent surface, okay? That's why they have to coat the surfaces. But when you coat the surfaces, right, and when you are mounting it inside, you also has to make sure that when this kind of friction is happening continuously, right? The mechanical property of this coating has to be very good. Okay. So people has to characterize these coatings. These coatings are nothing but of the range of nanometer scale. 100 to 500 nanometer thick coatings will be there. Okay. But we are more interested in the properties of the coating, not the substrate. Substrate is nothing but a stent material. Okay. So we are focusing on the coatings. Coating is in 500 nanometer scale height. So if you see a film and a substrate, right, which is very film is very small, then you at the bottom you have a substrate. And people wants to characterize this film properties. Okay, what happens is that when you are doing the indentation experiment on the film, right, you will be ending up reaching to the substrate. Okay, so there will be a influence of substrate on the actual load displacement data. So once you start going deeper into the film during the indentation experiments, when you are exerting a force, indenter is going deeper into the sample. And then at one point of time, the influence of substrate starts playing a role. And hence, your hardness value starts increasing as you go deeper into the sample. So the x-axis is nothing but a indentation depth, a film thickness. So as you go deeper into the sample, you will see the hardness is increasing as a function of depth. Why? Because the substrate is harder than the film. Soft film on a hard substrate. So the hardness value increases. If film is hard on a soft substrate, the response will be reversed. Okay. The hardness value starts decreasing with the depth. Okay. So this shows that when you are characterizing a coating, you have to be very sure that you are within a specific distance from the surface inside the film so that there won't be any substrate effect. Okay. So if you see, and what is the thumb rule of that? Thumb rule of that is nothing but that you have to be within the 10% of the film thickness. Your maximum displacement inside the film should be the 10% of the film thickness. Means if your film thickness is 500 nanometer, you have to be within 50 nanometer. You cannot go deeper than 50 nanometer inside the film. Okay. If you go beyond 50 nanometer inside the film, there is a possibility that whatever hardness and elastic modulus that you are getting may be influenced by the substrate also. It is not an independent property then beyond 50 nanometer. If it is 1 micron thick, people can go up to 100 nanometer. If it is 2 micron coating thickness, 200 nanometer is the maximum depth that you can go. So this is the thumb rule. If you go beyond 10%, right, there is a possibility of effect of substrate on the properties. Another important, so it is important for you, we called it as a single indentation experiment. At single location, we are doing the test and we are getting the information from one specific location. Okay. But there's a possibility that you want to characterize all across the area. From a specific area, you want to characterize the mechanical properties. Then we have an automation involved with this experiment. So if you see the image right now on your left hand side, you can see small dots all across the image, right? At equidistance, you will see small dots. The small dots are nothing but an indentation imprints. When you do the indentation at specific locations, right, it will leave an impression on top of it, right? So that impression is visible in this optical graph. Each particular point, I will be able to calculate the hardness and modulus value. Okay, so now if I take this modulus values at all these points, right? Modulus value here, 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 all points modulus value. I will take it. Okay, these are the data. These are the load displacement data for all these indents that I've got. And then if I plot this modulus value as a graph, right, I will be able to see something like this. Okay, so when I convert this data, modulus value data, into this, I will be seeing this kind of a graph. And if I compare this image with an optical graph, right, I will be able to see that this area material is different. This is something different. Here something is different. So if you see the value, right, yellow portion, green, then lighter green, then blue, right? So here something is very dark. So the gradient image on your right hand side, right, tells me that the material in this particular region is different, is offering a different modulus value than this area or this area or this area. Okay, so this kind of mapping, mapping experiments using the NAND indentation technique, right, will be very, very useful in case where you have a multi-phase sample. You have a multiple phase on the surfaces, different. Hello?
Yeah, I am muting to participant. Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. And then there is another case where people also tries to see whether the phase transition takes place. As in one of the slide where I've shown the pop-out event, right, where there is a possibility of a phase transition in the material. Okay, so this kind of things happens with the silicon material. Okay, phase transformation has been observed on the silicon, where when you exert a specific particular load on the silicon, right, and when you give a stress beyond some limit, right, the silicon loses the semiconducting property and becomes a metallic material. Okay, so when exactly this is happening, right, is an interesting research topic for the people who are working in semiconductor industry. Okay, so for that purpose also people have started utilizing this technology, right, generating force. Okay, loading unloading curve they are trying to see. Okay, where they could see this pop-in events happening at different locations. Okay, and when they are unloading the force, you are seeing the pop-out event as well. So what they have done is they have conducted the experiment, and then they have taken the silicon sample with the impression under the Raman spectrometer, and then they could see the difference in the spectra. Okay, first it is an indentation before indentation. So the left hand curve shows the graph without nano indentation experiment, and then the right hand side is a graph after the nano indentation experiment. You will see a different phase of the silicon is emerging after the nano indentation experiments. So it means that there is a definitely these events which are happening during the indentation, right, is giving kind of an information about what are the phases of this sample under the test. So before the first pop-in event, it is silicon 1. After the first event, right, you will have Si2, okay, and then after the pop-out event, you will have Si3 and Si611. So these are also observed during the Raman spectra. All this information has come up only once the people have started conducting nano indentation experiment on silicon and started observing this kind of events, right? If the conventional instruments has been utilized, you will never be able to see that this kind of events were happening, and then people have never tried to see that semiconductor in silicon, right, can also be a metallic material, can also become a metallic material some point of time. There is also creep studies people are conducting for the polymer samples, which are very soft. So as you people are building some kind of 3D objects or 3D printed objects, right, using polymers, right? Polymer has a behavior of creep. Creep is nothing but when you load a material, right, and leave that material under the loading conditions constant over a period of time, right, the material starts flowing. As at the beginning of the lecture, professor said that the material flows, right, and it depends on how long, okay. So there are a couple of materials which flows over a period of time, and some of the materials are like bismuth or something like that, bitumen samples and something like that. I've seen some people talk, right, that bitumen also flows under some particular conditions, okay. So every material, whether it is hard or soft, right, flows, and that flows characteristic has been studied using the indentation creep studies, okay. So you load the sample, right, you load the sample, and then as you see on the left hand side, you will have a holding segment, okay. So holding segment is nothing but where you keep the load constant over a period of time, okay, and that during that period of time you will see a difference in the depth. On the right hand side graph, you will see that the height, okay, indentation depth changes from H1 to H2, okay, and this H1 and H2 has to be utilized to characterize the creep, detection of relative change in the creep. This is also one of the application of nano indentation. So people can really study the creep with nano indentation experiments, particularly for the soft samples, polymer samples. Effect of manufacturing processes on the property. So there are a couple of hardness. Okay, so now if in this case, the two different polishing technique has been studied, standard polishing and electrolytic polishing, right? So if you see the graph on the right hand side, right, the hardness value, initial hardness value, right, is higher, and then over a period of time it gets saturated, but it has a different number than the electrolytic polishing technique. So the numbers are different. If you see, right, they are not matching, right, because the processes are different. So hardness of the surfaces again is a function of manufacturing processes, and that can be studied using this technique as a function of depth. Hardness of the dental implants. So a lot of other applications, right? So over a period of time, right, elastic modulus is important. Hardness and elastic modulus, characterization of an attachment for an artificial crown from niobium. Okay. Different processes. If you use different processes, see here, you can see 3 different experiments has been conducted. One is treated with NB, okay, niobium, treated with niobium and thermal treatments, and the third one is without treatments. Okay, bare sample. If you take a bare sample, your elastic modulus, see, elastic modulus is not a function of any of this. Okay, it's almost consistent. The white section is an elastic modulus. Okay, which is not changing too much. Okay, but the hardness is a function of what kind of treatments that you are giving it to the sample. Okay, when it is treated with niobium, the modulus, the hardness value is something in 2 GPa, 2.5 GPa around. Okay, then treated with niobium and thermal treatment is also given, then the hardness is reduced, and without treatment hardness is very high. Okay, my test condition is same. Okay, my testing condition, loading condition is same, only the processes are different, which reflects a different hardness value for the given ground. This is how you can do a comparative studies and come up with a proper optimized processes to achieve a specific characteristics. Here's another example where you have a coating and then you will be able to see the effect of substrate and coating here. Okay. So summary of a nanoindentation technique used for the local hardness and elastic modulus measurements can also be used for very low indentation depths and loads. Easy automatic metric indentation and analysis. This analysis is now we are utilizing standards. There's an ISO standard called 14577. So now this technology and analysis technique has been standardized. Advanced method for analysis also available, where you can convert this data into stress strain curves, and possibility to perform large matrices of indentation for statistical analysis, where I've shown one example of mapping of modulus across the surface to differentiate between their different phases on the surfaces. So eventually nanoindentation is a very powerful surface characterization techniques in terms of nanomechanical property characterizations like hardness and elastic modulus. It also helps us to study the creep and many other related informations, stress strain properties of the material. Applications of this nanoindentation is in different industries and academics. Industries mainly focusing on hard coatings, automotive manufacturers, suppliers where quality control is important, aeronautical industry, advanced polymer manufacturers, optics and glass industries, nuclear, civil research centers, steel manufacturers, processors, thermal spray manufacturers, and many more. Whereas in industry, academic and research institutes, where the space technology, universities, and nanoscience centers will be interested. Even semiconductor industry also is has also started looking into this particular direction. So I will have to stop about the nanoindentation here. I'll just move on to the another technique, atomic force microscopy technique, which is another surface characterization tool. So before I start to get into atomic force microscopy, I would like to have a review of microscopy techniques. Microscopy means imaging small objects at very small length scale. And this microscopy, very small length scale, right? And for that you need a tool, and that tool is nothing but a lens. Over a period of time, this lens has been utilized from reading small letters, books, then slowly the telescopes has been used for imaging the space objects which are very far from us. Then later, the scanning electron microscope also has been evolved. But this microscopy is optical microscopy as well as the scanning electron microscopy, right, are mainly the has a limit called Abbe limit. This Abbe limit has a constraint. What it is? The Abbe limit is a function of wavelength of the particle. So when we talk about the optical microscopy, it is this particle is nothing but a photon. But when we say electron microscopy, the particle is nothing but an electrons. And photons and electrons has a wavelength. When there is a wavelength, right, this defines minimum detectable, and this wavelength, right, basically defines the minimum detectable distance between two objects. This Abbe limits defines the resolution of the instrument. Okay, so if you know what is the photon wavelength, is something around 400 nanometers, something like that. Okay, so 400 nanometer is the wavelength. So the minimum detectable distance between the two objects has to be 400 nanometer. If the distance between two objects is 200 nanometer, optical microscope will see this two object as a one object. So that is a limitation, right? You cannot differentiate between these two objects having a distance of 200 nanometer. So the Abbe limit defines the resolution of the instrument. But then it is important for someone to get rid of this Abbe limit. That there should be a technique, or there should be an instrument or a technique which is not dependent on Abbe limit, and hence the wavelength. So it took quite long time, right, to come up with a new technique where people have started with scanning electron microscope, scanning probe microscopy, okay, which was invented in 1981 by Binning and the Gabor, okay, and the resolution is where the resolution is not limited by Abbe limit, and the smallest detectable feature that depends on the tip radius. So why to investigate nanostructures? Again, the question is same, which so we have compared two techniques, the microscopy, optical and scanning electron microscopy, their limitations, and then how scanning probe microscopy has been invented and how it is better than these two existing techniques. Why do we investigate nanostructures? In 1951, Robert Feynman has told that there is a plenty of room at the bottom and predicted the future of nanotechnology. Today, nanotechnology is all around the world, all around us, okay? And all industries are realizing these nanostructures every day, knowingly or unknowingly. These nanostructures creates new challenges for them to realize. How these nanostructures will enhance the performance of their final product. So, atomic force microscope will play a most important role for the industries in investigating these properties of such nanostructures. And hence, they will be able to realize how these nanostructures will enhance their final product. Atomic force microscope is a variation of scanning probe microscope where a physical probe is scanned over the sample surface. If you see the image, right, it is a blindfolded object. Okay, so atomic force microscope is, I believe, I say that it is a blind microscope, right? Optical microscope has some kind of a light, right, which is falling on the surface, and then you have something tool to see the surface, right? But in this case, there's nothing to. This microscope doesn't have any eyes. Okay, it is a blind microscope. So we put a blindfolded probe. Okay, and this probe will come into this contact with the surface, and this physical probe is scanned over the sample surface. The interaction is the interatomic force interaction between the surface and the probe. There is a interatomic force interaction between the probe and the surface. What we are getting out of the FM is nothing but a 3D profiles of the sample with vertical resolution of 1 nanometer. So the image that you are seeing at the bottom, right, is nothing but a AFM image of one particular surface. If you see that, you can see a step here, and these steps are of different materials and they are at different heights. So you are getting a 3D profile of the sample. Okay, and other than that, what are the other information that you can get out of it is a mechanical property, magnetic properties, electrical properties. How? Before that, we should know what are the instrumentation. As in the previous case, we discussed that nano-indentation, then we discussed about the instrumentation, then we go and do the actual experiments, and then the validation of the data. So the basic component of AFM is nothing but a cantilever with a sharp tip, a scanner, a detection system, a feedback mechanism, a control PC, computer, to control the instrument and data visualization. Cantilever with a sharp tip is shown on your right hand side. The leftmost image of the image is nothing but a chip. We call it as a chip, which is holding a cantilever at the extreme left side. You will see here a small pin that is coming out of it is nothing but a cantilever, which you are seeing in the center of the image. Okay, this is a cantilever. Okay, and then at the tip of the cantilever, you will see at the edge of this cantilever, you will see a tip. This is a tip which is glued on the cantilever, and this tip will be in contact with the surface, just like this. The scanner, okay, the scanner is connected to the cantilever and it is moving the sample for the scanning purpose. Okay, precise positioning of the tip. Detection system. Detection system is nothing but there is a laser light falling on the backside of the cantilever, and the reflection, you are taking it as a deflection of the cantilever. When the cantilever is moving up and down, right, the reflected beam will be moving up and down or a left and right. Okay, and that movement within this 4 quadrant will determine that how much movement of the cantilever has happened. Displacement of the cantilever is happened will be detected based on the spot of this reflected spot. Where is it in the 4 quadrant? The feedback mechanism. The feedback mechanism keeps the Z piezo, keeping the cantilever stay in the contact with the sample surface throughout the scanning. As my surface is not smooth, I have to keep my contact intact between the tip and the surface. So the important point here is the laser alignment, which I'm making. This laser alignment, right, is one of the most critical process for the final result. These are the sample navigation and approach steps. That first you use an optical microscope, find out the sample, where the sample is mounted on your stage, then zoom it, go to that specific samples. If you have multiple samples, then you can select one of them and then you go to a specific location, zoom again, okay, and then do the coarse approach where you are bringing the tip very closer to the surface, okay, just like this. And then after that you do automated approach where the tip will come in contact with the surface and establish the connection between the tip and surfaces. And once the tip is engaged and once the instrument says that the tip is in contact with the surface, right, you can start the scanning, or we call imaging. What are the different modes? Very basic modes of the AFM is, one is in contact mode, another is a tapping mode. The contact mode, your tip is always in contact with the surface. Means whenever you are moving, just like when you are writing a note, right? When you are writing a note or an exam paper, right? Your pen is on the paper and you are just writing, right? Continuously you are writing. Okay, so you are not lifting your pen up, right? And you are writing in a cursive, so you will be continuously, your pen tip and the paper is in contact with each other. That is what we called contact mode AFM. It's the same case. Okay. Then we have another case called tapping mode, where my pen is moving up and down. Okay, so I'm putting some dots. Okay, so and this dots has been replicated in terms of features of the surfaces. Now, what are the difference? Why there are two different modes? Contact mode, another is a tapping mode, where you are just moving up, and the tapping mode is tip is moving up and down continuously and scanning. Okay, so you will be, whenever tip is in contact with the surface, you will have a data. Okay, when it is not, you are not having a data. So whatever the topography, the details that you are getting from the photodiode, right, is not continuous but discontinuous data. Whereas in case of contact mode, you will have a continuous data. Okay. So what is the difference? Why people has to go with contact mode and tapping mode, two different basic mode, right? It's because when the tip is in continuous contact with the surface, there is a possibility that your tip will get blunt very soon, because what happens is that when two objects are in contact with each other, right, there will be a kind of a wear happening. Okay, because of this wear, tip will get blunt. Okay, and then your tip radius also will change. Initially your tip radius is something around 4 nanometer, but then over a period of time, once you use contact mode for a longer period of time, the 4 nanometer becomes 10 nanometer. And then, as I mentioned in my previous case once, right, here the smallest detectable feature depends on the tip radius. So if my tip radius changes from 4 nanometer to 10 nanometer, the smallest detectable feature changes from 4 nanometer to 10 nanometer. So you are losing the resolution because of this bluntness with the contact mode AFM. That's why it is very important for one to decide when to use contact mode and when to use tapping mode. If your surface or sample is soft, you can use contact mode so that your tip will not get blunt easily. Okay, because your material is very soft, tip will not get blunt. If your sample surface is hard, tip will get blunt. So this is how you have to decide which tip has to be used when. So if your sample is hard, you have to use a tapping mode AFM. So where your tip is in contact with your surfaces intermittently. So whatever the image that you are getting, right, your tip will not get blunt very easily. So once we know this basic mode of AFM, right, we straight away go to the next section, right? We'll be discussing about the advanced modes of AFM. The AFM basic modes are contact mode, tapping mode, and non-contact mode. We'll go and discuss little later. Why? And apart from this, right, as in one of my surface, why do we characterize surfaces? One of the slide I have shown, right, that the surfaces are interacting with the external world, right? So there is a possibility that there will be an optical interaction, there will be a electrical interaction, there will be a mechanical interaction, and magnetic interaction, and many more, chemical interaction. So whatever the interactions that the surface is facing, right, that property is important for us. So if the interaction is mechanical, is interaction is mechanical interaction, the mechanical property becomes important. If the interaction is electrical interaction, like it is a switch, okay, or a resistor, right? So the interaction has to be electrical properties. The important properties are the electrical properties. Okay, optical, then it will be an optical property. So the interaction defines the important properties which one are looking for. Okay, so the AFM can be utilized to characterize the mechanical properties, magnetic properties, electronic properties, and many more. So we will go one by one. We'll start with the mechanical property characterization. There's a mode called contact resistance amplitude imaging mode. What is the basic measuring principle? It is similar to a contact mode, okay, where tip is in continuous contact with the sample. But then the cantilever is oscillating at a constant amplitude, constant frequency near the contact resonance frequency. Okay. And it helps in differentiating material having different stiffness. How? Okay, so means if you remember in nano indentation technique, we did array of indentations across the interface, across the surface, and then we created an image, a contrast image, right, where we could see that there is a different material present on the surfaces, right? We did modulus mapping in that case. Here also with AFM also you can do the similar thing using this mode. It helps in differentiating materials having different stiffness. So what is it called? Phase imaging detection. Cantilever deflects in image, okay. Sample topography, the phase lag is used to mechanical property mapping so that image represents topography. So as I mentioned, this contact mode, it is a contact mode imaging. Means that you are getting the topography image first, okay, and simultaneously you will be having a mechanical property mapping as well. So the two information that you will be getting out of this single scan is, one is topography, okay, and another is a phase imaging. So if you see the right side example, right, you will see two images. One is on the left and is on the right. The left side and right side are completely two different images, right? Two different images. And if somebody doesn't know, they will see that these two are two different materials, but it is not. Why? Because the left hand side is nothing but a topography image where you are just simply seeing how the cantilever is deflected across the surface in a contact mode. Your tip is in contact with the surface and you are scanning. And when the tip is moving up and down, that data is collected and represented in this image, left-hand side image. Okay, but then it doesn't give any information if your surface is having a different material, right? No, but on the right-hand side is the image where you are collecting the phase data, right, and plotting that phase data as a function of scale, right? You will see that there is a different gradients of color, black, orange, yellow, white spots and all. This shows the difference in material on the surfaces, okay, and its distribution also. So if material is having a different matrix and phases, you will see how these phases has been distributed across the matrix. So mechanical property characterization, this is how you can actually do the topography and mechanical property characterization using the AFM. Applications of this mode is for the polymers, blends, fiber coatings, metal coatings, thin film coatings, lubrications, films, defects, soft biological samples and micromolecules. Phase detection can be used to obtain material property for samples which are soft, because it is in a contact mode, right? How it works? Doctor, how much time do I have? I may have to wind up quickly, right?
Yeah, I think because the next session was supposed to start at 1:30, but I have told that person to log in at 1:40. So
Okay.
maybe up to, yeah, up to 1:40 you can wind up. Yeah.
Okay. So I think so how this so what I'll do is I'll just keep a couple of slides. Let me finish this first. Okay, then the next I will be skipping because it is important. I don't want to disturb this right now because we are talking about mechanical properties. I'll stick to the mechanical properties. Okay, so how this mode works basically. Okay, you can see the difference in these two images, topography and the phase image, right? How it is. You consider this a simple example. Okay, when you are holding a ball and you throw the ball from your one particular distance from your hand. Okay, so if you see that ball hits the surface, okay, and bounced back. Okay, so when it bounced back, it will never reach to your hand. Okay, is it possible? Like so it is completely dependent on what surface it is. How much bounce back is happening depends on the surface. If it is hard surface, ball will rebound at a different height. If you're throwing a ball on a very soft surface like mat and all, right, it will not bounce back too much. Okay, so what happens is that information, okay, at the height at which ball is bouncing back is, I will call it as an amplitude. Okay, amplitude, and that amplitude is a response of the elastic material. Okay, and whatever the loss of energy that is happening, right, when hitting on the surface, right, is an energy loss in internal motion. Okay, so we have two information that I'm getting when I am conducting this experiment. Okay, one is elastic response, another is the loss of energy. If I measure this loss of energy, right, this loss of energy depends on the material where I'm bouncing it, right? So if you see this right hand side image, right, so my tip is moving across the surface. I'm moving this. Okay, when I'm coming across the soft sample, right, what happens is the oscillation, right, amplitude decreases because material is very soft. The amplitude decreases, okay, and there is a phase shift. So amplitude and phase shift changes, right? Whenever the material is different, phase shift is different. One is leading, another is lagging. So soft and hard, right? When it is hard, you will see the amplitude is increasing, but the phase shift also there exists. Okay, so this amplitude and phase I will have to utilize to define which material it is. A soft material, hard material, I can differentiate based on the amplitude and the phase that has been introduced for that particular region. So this amplitude and phase I will be plotting as a function of time, okay, over a period of time. So this mode is good option if different mechanical domains are expected. Qualitative difference and the size of the mechanical domain is interesting. Gives you both in the just one scan. Okay. So if you see these three different images, one is the topography image, this is the amplitude image, and this is the phase image. You will be able to differentiate between the material. Is an imaging board that provides topography and mechanical information in one scan. So the bottom image is basically the actual image extracted from the contact resonance amplitude imaging mode. You will be able to see the difference between the phases, amplitude and the phase. And you will be able to differentiate. So there are two phases. That's what it means. Okay. So one is SBS, another is PMMA. Shows contrast in amplitude and phase if the Young's modulus is different. There is another, the technique with AFM exists is a force distance curve, which is nothing but similar to the nanonutation experiments, where you apply a force and measure the displacement, and you plot the force displacement curve, and you extract the information just like you are extracting from the nanonutation experiments. But this one has been done at a very lower scale. You do the loading and unloading, okay, and then so you are taking this same image from the cry mode. Cry mode is a qualitative data information that you will be able to differentiate that there are two different phases present on the surface. But if you want to quantitative data, you use this force distance curve experiment using AFM, go to a specific locations like SPS and PMMA, right, and to conduct a indentation experiments at top of this. Once you are doing at PMMA, and one is you are doing at SPS, and when you calculate the value, you will be able to see that Young's modulus of SBS is something around 226, and for PMMA it is 141 GPa. So quantitative information, you can get it with this force distance curve. Assumptions and the tip radius and spring constants are taken from specifications. For calculations, probing of hard material stiffer than the cantilever is not possible. So these are some of the assumptions and limitations from the nanonutation through AFM. Okay, so message is a single point measurement of nanomechanical properties useful when quantitative knowledge of mechanical properties needed. Okay, so there are a couple of other advanced modes with AFM, and probably today's topic would not be much interested, but still we can characterize magnetic properties using magnetic force microscopy, okay, where the tip has to be a magnetic tip, and when you are scanning, you will be able to image. So these are the couple of examples how the magnetic image and the topography image looks like. So these are another couple of examples with the magnetic force microscopy image with the different samples. And then there is an electrostatic force microscopy where you want to study the electrical properties. And then if you are interested in electrochemical properties like work functions of the sample surfaces, you can utilize Kelvin probe force microscopy, where you can calculate the work functions for a specific tip. And then like you can also characterize the graphene with the same technique. These are a couple of images of the graphene flex on the silicon wafer. Summary of the electrical modes. These are also another electrical conducting modes where you are applying voltage, measuring the current, and important point is to characterize the conductivity or resistivity of the material. Where these are some, there are different ways what is used for direct measurements. Again, so the aerodynamic force microscopy, most people believe it is difficult, complicated, and needs expertise. We believe that needs to be easy and should be available for every segment of user, from the students to the industry. So we achieve, it's time for the people, researchers, and industry who have never explored this technology to explore the nano world that lays in front of them. Okay, so summary, AFM are based on the ability to position various types of probes in very close proximity, highly precise to the sample under investigation, and you can characterize different, map the different properties like mechanical properties, electronic properties, electrostatic, optical, thermal properties, and many more. So I'm sorry I just took quite a longer time, but I would like to summarize here. That's all. Thank you so much for your patience. And if you have some questions, and as I mentioned previously, that anybody who are interested, please write it to me on my email ID. Right. Anybody wants some questions, or I will send the questionnaires to Dr. Shiva. He can forward it to people. Those who are interested, please try to fill it and submit it. It would be nice exercise. It's not a big deal. Okay, and these are not big questions. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Shiva, for inviting me for this summer program. And I hope I have served the purpose.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Chintan. Thank you very much. It was indeed a wonderful session. Although maybe a bit on a higher level for the BTech students, but still, I guess they could pick up some bits and pieces, and maybe they can do their third year internship. Those who are in second year now, and their final year projects in advanced mechanical surface characterization in consultation with their teachers. For example, the teacher might be working on some research areas, so they can just take the sample, do the measurement at your location. This kind of stuff they can do.
Yes.
And also have a look at NTNPAR website under the events. They schedule lot of webinars. You can attend the webinars regularly. And also later on, when everything becomes normal, the students or the faculty, they can also attend the in-house sessions also. So these are just wonderful sessions. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. Yeah. If really wants to have a session, as you mentioned, right, it was on a higher end, right? I can still further work out. I tried my level best to come down to that level.
That's just fine. That's just fine, because I think it was just good. It was good. Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Take
care.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.